Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. My name is Callie Rouse, and I am a senior study abroad advisor, and I'm going to be co-hosting today's event, which is our programs in Scandinavia. It's focusing on DIS abroad, with Will, and I'll let Will introduce himself.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching this recording. My name is Will. I work for DIS in our North American office. I was also a DIS student myself when I was in school and actually a University of Michigan student. And Callie was my advisor for DIS, so I'm always happy to do events with you all. Yeah, hope to see you in Denmark or Sweden.
Absolutely. All right. So, getting into the very basics of the program. So, location-wise, we have Copenhagen, Denmark, or Stockholm, Sweden. So, in the academic year, students will pick one or the other. We work with DIS for the program, so otherwise known as like Study in Scandinavia. And students will apply on mCompass, which is the University of Michigan's like study abroad platform, as well as like DIS's portal. We have a program FAQ for this program, but overall, some basics on the academics. Students choose one core class from one of multiple tracks. These are a couple of examples of that, but they really like span across different discipline areas. And then students will take an elective course. And the elective course doesn't have to have anything to do with the core course. The core course just is that special element of it is that there is travel component with it. There's two different travel weeks involved. And students can check out on the DIS website the details about any of the elective or core courses that are available. And students also can enroll into a 3 credit practicum in various fields. This is kind of like similar in structure to internships. And there's also opportunity in directed and independent research. These are competitive opportunities for research, but they absolutely are there and where students can work with faculty on particular topic areas. And then there are 3 housing options that are available to Michigan students, which is a homestay, a living learning community, and the collegium, which we'll get onto a little bit more in detail later. All right, so courses and core electives. I will have Will kind of chat about this in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Kelly mentioned, you will apply to DIS as well as the UMich portal. And when you apply to DIS, you will want to pick out your top 2 core course options. Usually it's, a student's major or minor. It doesn't need to be, but your core course is essentially your academic home base. So no matter which one you choose, there are 2 travel components involved in your core course. You go with your classmates and your faculty in that course twice throughout the semester to different European cities. Does not need to be in your major field. Certain most students, I would say it is just because of how the cards fall. And there are also some labs that have co-requisites with a certain core course. Alongside your core course, you will pick out 3 or 4 elective classes after you are admitted to DIS. So you'll have access to an online registration portal, and up to 6 months before the term starts, you're able to pick out your full course schedule. So it can be a bunch of electives plus a core course, or you could also tack on a lab or even a research opportunity. All of our courses are first come, first serve. So as soon as you have the ability to register for classes, I say jump on it. The exception to that is the research, as Kelly mentioned. It is a bit more competitive, definitely worth applying for if you're interested in that. Um, but if you are strongly interested in research, I would consider Stockholm as well because you would be more likely to get a research position at DIS Stockholm.
Awesome. And I will have you chat a little bit about housing as well and the differences between them. These pictures here are examples from a couple of different housing options that we have in both locations.
Yeah. For sure. So we have 3 main housing options for University of Michigan students that study abroad with DIS. We have homestays, and it's probably exactly what you think of when it comes to staying with a host or a host family. We have a pretty diverse selection of homestay hosts that work with DIS. Some, families with young children, some are a couple with no children, some have pets, cats and dogs. So we usually, if you have something specific that you're looking for, like, oh, I want to live with a family that has a cat and like a young woman my own age, um, we love the specifics. It helps us match you better. Homestay certainly is the most culturally immersive housing type, but it's not for everyone. So we do have other options that you'd be able to live in apartment style housing and not stay in a homestay. But if you do want that, that access to local life and local families, I would recommend opting into our visiting homestay program, which Callie mentions as well. It's not guaranteed that you get a visiting host, um, but we usually do have a bit more students who apply for it than visiting hosts available. But it's a great way to connect with a local family and not live with them, but meet up with them once a week, once a month. It's super, it's pretty much it's however you want to build it. So you'll work with your you'll chat with your visiting host and see how often you want to see each other, what you want to do. We like to hear about students' interests. So if you're really big into fishing or, canoeing, we can usually find you a match with, a visiting host that has similar interests. But those other housing options, living and learning communities is one of those apartment style housing options. So you're in a themed suite style living arrangement with all DIS students. So you're in an apartment with those DIS students. You're sharing a bathroom, sharing a kitchen, sharing common spaces. And there's also a theme or like a hobby that all these students have in common or an interest. So some examples of those living and learning communities, we have a culinary LLC and an outdoor LLC. And all of these, this housing theme goes on weekly meetings, weekly outings related to their LLC theme. So the outdoor living and learning community has gone kayaking, they've gone mountain biking, they've gone rock climbing, done a bunch of cool things. And all of these LLCs have a DIS staff member that is passionate about that subject, that's going on these weekly outings or events with these students, that's making sure the students are interested in them. So it's a great housing option for students that, first are passionate about one of those themes that we do offer, but also if you are maybe a bit more worried or anxious about meeting people right off the bat, I think the LLCs are a great way to have a built-in community at DIS. And the last option that's on the screen there is the Collegium and Student Bone Day. Those are two different words for essentially the same thing. Collegium is Danish, and then Student Bone Day is Swedish. They're apartment style housing options that have a mix of DIS students as well as local students studying in Greater Stockholm or Greater Copenhagen. So you'll share a bedroom probably with the DIS students. Most students do have a roommate. But in your suite, on your floors, there will be local students studying at the universities surrounding Copenhagen or Stockholm. Great option if you're interested in meeting locals around your age. The folks there, not the DIS students, but the locals, have signed contracts to live in these spaces for usually about 4 years. And they know DIS students are studying abroad for, 4 months at a time. They do see a lot of turnover and they're really interested into getting to know you. It's just a great way to meet others and find out what's to do around Copenhagen or Stockholm. Um, One other thing that I like to note, I can't remember if this is later on in the PowerPoint, Callie, so I apologize if it is. But commuting, all students, you should expect a 20 to 30-minute commute regardless of which housing option that you're in. Homestays a little bit farther, closer to maybe 30, 40 minutes. But we'll give you a Metro card from wherever you're living to DIS. We'll make sure that there's a Metro or a bus station nearby. But that's a pretty big adjustment coming from the US for sure, especially from Michigan, where our public transit really doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great thing to mention because I think for students that are, at the University of Michigan, they're not used to like a great deal of commuting and distance from campus. But I find that when you're living in these larger European cities, I myself like studied abroad for a semester in Prague. Having the experience of like living through like daily life and as part of that commuting on public transit and engaging with life in that way is like something that students come back from the program and like really appreciate in a way that they like did not realize that like being on public transit would be like such a like a culturally enriching and like connecting kind of experience. So I warn students like to not be like kind of like alarmed or like and be like, oh my God, like I have to commute so much every day. It's super normal in a large European city and it's just part of life there. And so it really integrates you in like what a real life experience in that country is like.
Right. Right. I mean, it is absolutely. And in Scandinavia, I mean, it's one of the easiest places to practice,
Mhm.
your public transit skills. It's safe, it's clean, it's affordable, it's reliable. So yeah, and it certainly makes you feel more like a local, just getting to class every day on a metro or a bus. Yeah,
Yeah. And speaking of the two cities, I'm going to have you chat a little bit about the two different cities.
yeah,
Why would a student want to go to Stockholm versus Copenhagen? What are unique elements of it? Particularly in this particular photo is a picture of Stockholm. But yeah, if you can chat a little bit about the two different cities in detail.
yeah, for sure. Well, since we're coming from public transit, I feel like it'd be amiss if I didn't mention that Stockholm is home to the world's largest art installation just in the metro stations. So if you're like a public transit nerd like myself, you'll find that interesting. But it's also a city on water, surrounded by water. Stockholm itself is, I mean, surrounded by 20,000 islands or so. So included in your transportation card, you can take the ferry and like island hop. So that's something to look forward to. Um, I know you'd all be studying abroad for the winter, but definitely towards the end of the semester in April, early May, it's a great thing to do. But at DIS Stockholm, we're located in the same building as the Royal College of Music. It's actually what my Zoom photo is right here. It's this floor to ceiling glass building. It's gorgeous. There's a lot of light in, which is especially helpful in Stockholm in those wintry months when you don't get a lot of light at the end of the day. So it's nice to really have it when there is some. There's a cafe in the bottom of the building. It's quite nice. Um, Super small class sizes. DIS Stockholm. My course when I was studying at DIS was 14 students. Um, I'd say it's pretty normal to have maybe 15 to 20 students in your classes at DIS Stockholm, maybe a little bit fewer even. Um, it's quite a big city itself. So, because of those islands, it is so separated. But metro system, super comprehensive, very easy to use, and Stockholm isn't regioned off like Copenhagen is in that you have a transportation card for the entire county of Stockholm. So you can hop on a bus or a train, not really worrying about if you have the right ticket because it's in the entire county. So if you're not going too far, that's not something to worry about. And Fika is the last thing on here that I want to talk about. If you are at DIS Stockholm, if you're in Stockholm, you will certainly experience Fika. You might have even heard it before. It's essentially this idea to stop and take a break in the middle of a day or whenever it is, and have a coffee or pastry with whoever you are nearby, or even just by yourself, and take an intentional break from whatever it is you're doing, and have a little bit of rest for yourself. Um, Usually that includes a cardamom bun and a coffee. And I would be extremely surprised if you didn't have a fika break in one of your classes at DIS. Kelly, was there anything about Stockholm that you want to mention and outside of what I've said so far?
Yeah, I would just emphasize there's like def academic differences between the two
Hmm.
locations. And sometimes students can struggle to get into classes in Copenhagen that they can get better access to in Stockholm. But yeah, I would just emphasize like the very like homey kind of feel of like the Stockholm campus, having visited there myself, where like you're really able to have like kind of a very tight-knit community. And I think it's something that's really wonderful, particularly for University of Michigan students to be able to experience, because you're used to being on such a large campus. You're able to really develop those like more like close-knit relationships with your faculty that students aren't as used to getting here in the US. And this could be totally beneficial for students, for their future to have people that could provide recommendations to them and just like some and faculty they're able to like build connections with.
Yeah.
And that's similarly in Copenhagen too, but I think even more so in like Stockholm. Yeah.
Absolutely. The DIS population itself is much smaller in Stockholm. So it also feels more the DIS Stockholm, it's building itself honestly does feel more homey because you do more, you know more people there, you know more faculty, you know more DIS staff, you know more DIS students. Um, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do agree with that. In terms of academic differences, in case any students watching this back are wondering what those academic differences are, um, neuroscience, psychology, engineering, data science, I think are all great options to take at DIS Stockholm. Um, Heavy emphasis on neuroscience there because I do think those classes fill up particularly fast in Copenhagen, as well as really most of the health sciences. Um, yeah. In Copenhagen, it is a we've been around. We actually started DIS started in Copenhagen in 1959, so we've been in the heart of the city for decades now. We have classes spread out in multiple buildings, in two of the main touristy streets in the center of the city. If you just type DIS Copenhagen, should pull right up on Google Maps there. Our classes are a bit larger than they are in Stockholm. We like to cap the classes around 25 students, so still relatively small compared to your UMich classes, I would assume. Copenhagen, certainly a very walkable city, zone-based transit, as I mentioned, so it's less spread out than Stockholm, but the metro station is a little bit more complicated, I would say. Um, Very charming city, cobblestone pretty much everywhere. There's an amusement park right across from DIS that actually inspired Disney World. It's called Tivoli, so you should certainly go there towards the end of the winter semester when it starts to warm up. Bikes are huge in Copenhagen. They rule the world. It is not a city designed for cars, but rather people and bikes. Um, and I have to look like five different ways whenever I cross the street just to make sure I don't get run over a bike. So I would really encourage you to do the same. And if you are planning to bike, which I certainly recommend that you do if that's something that interests you, we have recommendations for places where you can get a bike at a student discount, but also make sure you know the biking laws and biking rules so you're confident on that bike in Denmark. Huga. Huga, kind of similar to Fika, but a bit different. There's no direct English translation, so it does take a few sentences to translate, I would say. But Huga is this idea of pausing, taking some intentional space for the ones that you love. If you're having dinner with friends and they're coming over to your apartment or your house, you'll take the time to light some candles, make sure the lights are like in the right atmosphere that you want it to be, make sure everything is cozy. So I hope that you experience a lot of hygge if you come to DIS, either Copenhagen or Stockholm, and I'm sure that you will, but you'll see a hygge pretty much everywhere. I know some students end up with it tattooed on them at the end of the semester. Not that I encourage that, but we have seen that quite a few times.
Absolutely. I've never heard that story before.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yes. No, it is something.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And here are some photos. So these are photos that actually I took when I visited the program.
Oh, it's almost the
So
same.
give you an idea. So this is, yeah, this is the same place where Will is like virtually right now. This is kind of in the downstairs area. There's a cool little coffee shop here that students can go to, and then upstairs is where the DIS classrooms and study spaces are and things like that. This kind of shows you an example of like some of the smaller classes. This is a class just of like I think like 6 students that were learning together. And some of them are on bigger scales and things like that. But yeah, give you kind of like a visual snapshot of Stockholm and then Copenhagen. So this is like in the main study center, where like the student center where students can gather. This is out on that street. They're getting to the cobblestone streets and bikes. But this also kind of like shows a little bit of the classroom space as well. Both really wonderful campuses. Yeah. And I also have collected some comment or some blogs that students have posted about their experiences in both cities. So I interviewed with students directly, but then students have also completed like guides and blogs about their experience. I actually have a brand new one to add, which I just dropped in the chat, which is all about fika and the students like top like fika recommendations. Which make me very jealous because I absolutely love the cardamom bun. But I think these are also helpful for students who are trying to figure out like what location seems best for them, and what is kind of like the highlights of these locations. So getting into the application process itself. So now you're like, okay, I want to do this program. What do I need to do? So there are 2 different applications you need to fill out. You'll start with the mCompass application, as that provides instructions on how to do both applications. But important thing to note is that both your mCompass and your DIS portal applications must be completed by the deadline. So I think I had that in the snapshot at the beginning, but I didn't say it aloud. For winter, the application deadline is what is it? Is August 1st, and then there is a later deadline of September 1st. We very strongly encourage students to apply to the early deadline because DIS accepts students on a rolling basis, but CGIS does not. And so, because of that, students who wait until after August 1st to apply run the risk of not being able to get into the core course they want. And they also, the registration window for other classes might open up before they get admitted to the program. And so we really do strongly encourage students to apply early. Those students who apply later definitely have still been able to get into the program. Yeah. So a little bit about the applications themselves. So this is kind of just a brief overview, but on mCompass, you have an education abroad nomination form, and you will complete some information about yourself. You'll also need to rank the program. I'll get into what the competitive program ranking is and how that functions later. But you'll have to indicate this program as your top choice program. You will need to provide a passport. So students who are thinking about applying right now should apply for their passport now. And then we also need proof that you have completed your DIS application, which that DIS application entailed your core course selections. So what are your top ones that you're most interested in? Some short essay responses that are just two of those, so not too much. But to get a little bit more information about you, your unofficial transcript, and then there's that home institution approval, which actually won't get completed until after I review your application, because I need to be able to ensure that everything looks good on our end to approve you to go abroad. Getting into additional notes, so we're going to kind of go into a little bit of detail about policies and also how to learn a little bit more about study abroad and financial support. So for course approval, so I recommend if you're looking at this, winter 2027 timeline, utilize the fact that like we're still on campus right now to have conversations about what core courses should I apply to that will be able to, work for my major and minor. So start your conversations early about study abroad. They can help you decide kind of what requirements to complete abroad versus what must be done on campus. For LSA students, you will receive in-resident credit on your transcript no matter what, even if your class isn't going to count for a specific requirement. However, you can opt to take some classes pass fail if you would like, as long as they're not in your major or minor. Um, and we have a lovely like by major page or our maps page that goes through a bunch of different departments and provides some information on how pre-approvals might work. And some departments have public-facing pre-approval lists, such as like the BCN psychology department. For distribution classes, you should be consulting with your general academic advisor about whether you can count something for humanities, social sciences, and so on. They'll be the one that needs to make that determination by looking over the syllabi for the course you're interested in. So definitely take a look at the course offerings, narrow down your courses, find the syllabi, which is very easily located on DIS's website, and set up an appointment with your advisors. For the multiple application policy, so students are only allowed to apply to one CGIS program per application cycle unless their program is competitive. This program falls under that. And so what you can do is you can either apply just to this competitive program. And I think this is an okay option if you're applying to the August 1st deadline. But students often will apply to their first choice as well as a non-competitive backup choice. And this especially is recommended for students who wait and apply after the August 1st deadline, so that you have the best chance to find a successful placement abroad. Do note that you cannot apply to two competitive programs. So you need to make sure that the other program you're looking at has to be a non-competitive. The only other caveat I want to mention is with Spain and Czechia programs, these cannot be indicated as a backup option for fall programs due to their visa processes. The only exception to that is like this, like if you're backing up a Czech program on another Czech program, that's basically it. Um, Otherwise, when applying for more than one program, be aware of acceptance timelines for programs as they vary a lot. So you might hear back from your backup choice program earlier than your competitive choice program. So be aware of that. And students should also consult with CGIS program advisors for specific program questions and exceptions. Um, Getting into financial aid and scholarships. So students can make an appointment to get an estimate with the study abroad estimate worksheet with their financial aid abroad team over in the financial aid office. So any excess financial aid and scholarship funds on that student's account are dispersed according to the university's normal timeline. So, for example, if you receive like the same package that you do here for your experience abroad, you can receive that as a fund and like go around and pay DIS for the cost of the program. For LSA Study Abroad Scholarship, so this is available to students who qualify for need-based aid support. The winter application has opened, and students will need to apply by September 22nd, 2026. I generally recommend students apply for the study abroad scholarship at the same time as they're applying for their study abroad program, and it typically is a pretty fast process. And if you have any questions about your eligibility and how that process works, you can check out that link and also email the LSA scholarships team. And we also have information on additional scholarship opportunities on CGIS's website, including scholarships, as Will mentions in the chat, scholarship opportunities from DIS directly. So definitely check those out as well. And earlier is better, so as some of them have earlier deadlines. Yeah. Otherwise, so if you're kind of coming out of this and going, I have questions specific to my particular background and like major, you can reach out to us for CGIS advising. So we have peer advisors you can meet with students, but you can also meet one-on-one with advisors like myself. And these are a couple of resources that are available to you that we'll be sharing out after the presentation. And then Will.
Yeah, and same goes for us. We've got a bunch of information on our website. But if you do have more questions, want to meet one-on-one with an advisor, or even just go to a more broad info session with another GIS staff, we have both opportunities for you to sign up and book either of those. Also recommend checking out the student bloggers on our website. We have actually right now current bloggers from this spring, or I guess a winter, UMich winter term of 2020, sorry, 2026 still. Still writing about their time in Copenhagen and Stockholm, what their housing is like, what their academics are like. So that's a great place to find out more info as well.
Yeah, so that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. And my contact information is available if you wanted to reach out to me directly for more information. Thank you.